My name is Neal Thomas, and I've been invited to give an introduction to the themes of my paper, Digital Bildung as Semantic Emplacement. It's maybe helpful to spend my time unpacking the title as a way into the meat of the piece. I'll start by saying that the paper picks up on recent debates around the notion of digital Bildung, and therefore starts by explaining the idea of Bildung itself. You may have already encountered the term, which refers to a 19th century German tradition in education of self-cultivation. Bildung as an idea stems especially from Wilhelm von Humboldt's perspective on education, that one's experience in self-development should be understood as perpetually linked through learning over the course of a lifetime. Bildung involves contemplating how one's selfhood and identity undergo moral and intellectual transformation over time. It names a process of personal and cultural maturation that needs to be carefully theorized in educational circles because it matters not only for individuals and their self-realization, but also societies on the whole, who should want their citizenry to be intelligent, critical, and open-minded in the face of change. It's worth mentioning also that in recent years, Bildung as an idea has come to focus on emancipation and freedom from power structures, including state power. This has occurred under the influence of critical theory, as understood through the Frankfurt School, and also thinkers like Michel Foucault. Now, in the 21st century, it will maybe come as no surprise that education theory has wondered more specifically about the role that internet platforms and technologies play in fostering Bildung, hence a turn to the notion of digital Bildung. Early in the paper, I explain that work in this vein has tended to focus on the benefits and drawbacks of two opposed perspectives. On the one hand, understanding the cultured citizen at arm's length from technology, and on the other hand, the benefits and drawbacks of considering technology as an environment for Bildung, or we might say Bildung as made possible from within the technology. Obviously, there are insights to be had from both positions. There is so much hype these days devoted to technological invention as the savior and driver of our future prospects, for example. And if we want to be critical about that hype, then it makes sense to take a perspective on Bildung that is exterior to technological thinking. We should want to foster certain values in education that can be instilled in individuals regardless of the dominance of a given technology at some historical point in time. But there is also value in acknowledging our perpetual dependence on technologies. Given how widespread digital tools have become in everyday life and learning, it's uncontroversial to say that today's self-cultivating individuals do so through the capacities that they build using digital tools. In the paper, I mostly adopt this second position on digital Bildung. But rather than firmly take a side as framed in an either-or way, the paper focuses instead on the interface between culture and technology as it relates to self-formation through digital tools. I argue that digital Bildung can best be characterized as a perpetual entanglement with them, and more importantly, that we would benefit from seeing this entanglement as more fluidly semiotic in nature. This is where the rest of the paper's title, Semantic Emplacement, comes into play. I spent time arguing that when we talk about digital Bildung, these days we are effectively talking about datified Bildung. At the heart of my suggesting this modification is the idea that beyond our use of internet technologies being based in digitalities, that is, computers that work using binary code or the empirical quantifications of reality that are happening in all kinds of different ways using computers, the modern internet very much works according to the logics of semantic precision. A reliance on formal semantics is a key semiotic feature of society's ongoing datification. When we use social media or search, for example, each of us has some awareness that the capacities of these tools to match information or media objects to our interests or preferences is somehow grounded in the quantification of language. Modern platforms are designed to formalize an interactive relationship between what a specific person finds meaningful through the keywords that they use to describe something and the highly formalized approaches to language that are necessary to enact this relationship with internet content overall. At a very basic level, then, information professionals understand this relationship as one of semantic aboutness. Whether you are using your phone to discover facts about a bird in your backyard, browsing to see what's trending on social media, or relying on your streaming service to recommend what to watch on TV, you are engaged with this idea of aboutness, expressing interest in a specific topic in such a way that the system can discover patterns online that satisfy your interest in that topic. But as the paper develops, there's an underlying problem that emerges. As we come to rely on this logic in more and more social contexts, the risk is that we start to ignore, or render invisible, or even repress other dimensions of meaningfulness that don't currently fit together with this widespread formalization of aboutness. Here it maybe makes sense to quote a passage from the paper itself. As it comes to act more and more as a basic substructure for Bildung, semantic self-consciousness, read as aboutness, also becomes a main site for the performance and existential realization of self. This makes it increasingly a site for the maintenance of group boundaries in social life, defining the latter more and more in terms of retrieving facts and knowledge. This would include framing the social conditions for encounters with peers and strangers in everyday life, and the potential for cultural or political conflict between groups, unquote. To say it more basically, when you read in the popular press about us all living in our own filter bubbles, or worry that distraction or political polarization are being exacerbated by our use of social media, the paper argues that part of the problem is this excessive emphasis on semantic aboutness, driven as it is by the economic and bureaucratic incentives that are in turn driving the widespread datification of societies. How does this connect back to Bildung? I'll mention two directions that the paper takes from here. One, I spend time discussing the emerging literature on how datification affects educational contexts, connecting this work into my perspective on semantic aboutness. And two, as I gestured to earlier, I move towards unpacking the roots of semantic aboutness by discovering them in the semiotic philosophy of Charles Sanders Peirce. I do this as a way of ultimately suggesting some ways to intervene into this looming overemphasis on aboutness as a perspective on meaning when it comes to theorizing the future of digital Bildung. So you may have surmised in this video abstract that the paper covers a lot of ground, some of it quite philosophical or even esoteric. But I hope that readers will be rewarded with some fresh insight into the relationship between education understood as self-formative enculturation through digital tools with respect to the ongoing datification of societies. Thanks a lot for listening.